Hello everyone, and welcome to Behind the Bulletin. Today, we're bringing you a heartwarming and much talked about story that has captured the attention of fans everywhere. So thoughtful, Lee Min-ho is being widely praised for his genuine care and quiet support for Song Hye Kyo during her recovery. What really happened behind the scenes? And why has this moment touched so many hearts? Stay with us and let's take a closer look, starting right now. It started the way these stories always do, quietly. Almost invisibly, like a spark hiding under ash. No grand announcement. No staged photo call. Just a strange, sudden shift in the air around Song Hye Kyo. As if something behind the curtain had changed and the world hadn't caught up yet. For days, fans noticed the smallest details first, a schedule adjusted without explanation. A public appearance delayed. Brief message that sounded careful rather than casual. Nothing confirmed. Nothing spelled out. And that uncertainty, thin as a blade, was enough to slice straight through the calm. Then the whispers began. Not the playful, harmless kind. The anxious kind that makes people refresh their feeds at midnight. The kind that turns silence into a screaming headline. Is she okay? Why isn't anyone saying anything? What happened off camera? Every question multiplied into 10 more. And the tension grew with every hour that passed without answers. Behind closed doors, the mood reportedly wasn't just concerned, it was urgent. The atmosphere around her became guarded, measured. People were counting every word before letting it escape. Those closest to her kept their faces neutral in public. But anyone with sharp eyes could feel it. This wasn't a routine break. This was recovery. And then, unexpectedly, Lee Min-ho's name entered the conversation. Not through a statement. Not through a dramatic reveal. Through something far more dangerous, a pattern. A presence. A series of small appearances in places he didn't need to be. At times that didn't align with his usual schedule. With a kind of quiet attentiveness that didn't look like coincidence. At first, people dismissed it as rumor hunting. A desperate internet doing what it always does, connecting dots that were never meant to touch. But the more it spread, the more it sharpened into something uncomfortable to ignore. A staff member's offhand comment. A blurred background in a photo. A shadow behind a tinted car window. Case seen briefly. Wrapped in soft paper. Carried with a kind of care that suggested it wasn't just a prop. And then the detail that ignited everything, someone claimed they saw him. At the same private location where her team had been coming and going quietly. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Fans didn't just talk, they erupted. Some were moved to tears by the idea of tenderness in a world that feeds on spectacle. Others were suspicious. Why? How do you know? Is this even real? The arguments became louder than the original whispers. And suddenly the story wasn't just about recovery. It was about what happens in the darkness when no one is supposed to be watching. And that's where the tension truly began, because if there was one thing the public could not tolerate, it was not knowing. Came the moment that pushed the entire situation over the edge. A short clip surfaced, grainy, shaky. Filmed from too far away to be comfortable. In it, a figure believed to be Lee Min-ho stepped out of a vehicle and moved with purpose. Not toward cameras, not toward fans, but toward a guarded entrance. His posture was different from the polished red carpet version of him. Less celebrity. More protective. As if he wasn't trying to be seen, but wasn't afraid to go anyway. The clip was only seconds long. But seconds are all it takes to start a fire. So thoughtful. People wrote, flooding the comments. He didn't have to do that. He's quietly supporting her. This is what real care looks like. Praise poured in so fast it became a wave. And the wave became a storm. Meanwhile, skeptics fought back with equal force, claiming it was just a coincidence. A misidentification. A narrative built out of shadows. But the story wouldn't stop growing, because it had already found the perfect fuel, vulnerability. Song Hye Kyo, known for her composure and restraint, had always carried herself like someone who could handle anything with grace. That's exactly why the idea of her needing recovery hit so hard. Fans weren't just curious, they were emotionally invested. They weren't just watching, they were holding their breath. And in the middle of that collective breath holding, the thought of Lee Min-ho showing up, calm, quiet, consistent, felt like a plot twist too tender to be real. Then a new detail appeared. And it landed like a punch. A source close to the situation, anonymous, of course, claimed that the care wasn't a one-time gesture. It was ongoing. Not flashy. Not performative. The kind of help people don't broadcast because it's meant to be private. Deliveries arranged without names attached. Small comforts handled discreetly. Conversations kept away from prying ears. Source described it with one word that spread across social media like lightning: steady. Steady support during recovery. Steady presence during silence. Steady care when the world is loud. Word changed everything. It made the story feel less like gossip and more like something intimate, almost sacred. And once the public tastes intimacy, it becomes obsessed with owning it. But the more praise rose, the more dangerous the pressure became. Because if it was true, someone was trying very hard to keep it quiet. And if someone was trying to keep it quiet, there was a reason. If there was a reason, it could only mean the reality behind the scenes was more fragile than anyone realized. The tension reached its peak the night a single photo appeared, then vanished. It was posted for only a few minutes before disappearing. But not before screenshots spread like wildfire. The image showed a hallway. Softly lit. A door. Person from behind, tall. Unmistakably shaped like Lee Min-ho. Holding something in his hands, possibly a bag, possibly flowers. Possibly something more personal. The caption was simple. Almost cruel in its restraint: "He came again." Again. That one word turned the internet into a battlefield. Praise exploded. He's not leaving her alone. He's taking care of her, this is genuine. But the other side struck back harder: stop inventing stories. Don't drag them into rumors. Respect her privacy. The arguments were so intense that the original point, her recovery, began to drown beneath the noise. And yet, the noise only grew. 'Cause now people weren't just asking what happened. They were asking what it meant. Why would he be there? Why would he come again? And why did it feel like everyone involved was walking on a tightrope over a cliff? The next morning, a new wave hit, reports that her team was monitoring misinformation and requesting respect. Not confirmation. Not denial. Just carefully chosen words, words that sounded like a warning. The story had reached the stage where anything said, or not said, would become evidence. And in that pressure cooker, the public did what it always does when it can't get the truth: it imagines a more dramatic version of it. Recovery became mystery. Mystery became fear. Fear became obsession. And Lee Min-ho's gentle care became the center of a storm. Powerful enough to swallow both of them if it kept spinning. By the time the sun set again, one thing was undeniable: whatever was happening behind the scenes wasn't just a soft story about kindness. It was a high-tension narrative with a question at its core: sharp, dangerous, and impossible to ignore. Was this just compassion, or was it something deeper that no one was ready to admit? The second phase of the story didn't unfold like a reveal. It unfolded like a chase, fast, relentless, and fueled by a hunger that no statement could satisfy. Praise for Lee Min-ho's thoughtfulness continued to climb. Something else began to emerge in the background: control. Not in a sinister way, but in the way people try to control a situation that could break apart if handled carelessly. There were sudden shifts in schedules. Quiet cancellations. Tightened security around private entrances. The kind of movements that suggest not only concern, but urgency. And with every attempt to contain it, public's curiosity became sharper. Then came the rumor that changed the tone from emotional to explosive. Someone claimed that the reason her recovery was being treated so carefully wasn't just because she needed rest, it was because she needed privacy. Privacy from cameras. Privacy from speculation. Privacy from the world that would turn healing into entertainment. That claim hit like a thunderclap. It reframed everything. It made the quietness feel less like routine and more like protection from something fragile and easily shattered. And suddenly, the idea of Lee Min-ho being present didn't sound like a sweet gesture anymore. It sounded like a shield. Late one night, another detail surfaced, small, but devastating in how it landed. A post from a fan who said they saw him leaving a private building at an hour when no one would want to be seen. The description was vivid: his cap pulled low, his steps fast, his head turned away from the streetlights. Posture of someone enjoying attention. The posture of someone trying to outrun it. The post ended with one sentence that made people's stomachs drop: he looked worried. Worried. Not smiling. Not calm. Worried. The internet reacted instantly. Praise turned into concern. Concern turned into panic. People began to speculate wildly about her health, her condition, her emotions, her life. Recovery that had been whispered about now felt like a room the public was desperately trying to break into. In that chaos, something shocking happened. Instead of fading away, the admiration for Lee Min-ho intensified. It wasn't just thoughtful anymore. It was rare, mature, real. Fans framed it like a story of loyalty under pressure, of someone showing up when it mattered most, even if it meant being misunderstood. The narrative swelled until it became almost cinematic, a quiet protector, a guarded star, a world outside banging on the door. But the more cinematic it became, the more dangerous it was, because reality is never as neat as fiction. Then, as if to add gasoline to the blaze, insider claim appeared, suggesting that his support wasn't limited to visits or gestures. Claim implied that he'd been coordinating help through people close to her, ensuring she had what she needed without increasing public attention. Not romance, not spectacle, just care, delivered carefully. A secret being carried with both hands. That claim, whether true or not, struck a nerve. I wanted to believe it because it felt good. It felt like hope in a world that often rewards cruelty. But hope has a shadow, it blinds. And the moment the public decided this was a beautiful story, started treating it like a certainty, not a possibility. They began writing conclusions before the story had even ended. They began insisting they knew what was happening behind closed doors. That's when the backlash hit. A wave of voices rose, angry, protective, exhausted, calling the entire narrative invasive. Let her recover in peace. Stop dragging her name into fantasies. Kindness doesn't need a spotlight. The comment sections became war zones. Every attempt to praise him was met with accusations of exploitation. Every call for privacy was met with frustration over the silence. The tension became unbearable because both sides were fueled by emotion, and emotion doesn't negotiate. And then, at the peak of this chaos, came the most shocking twist of all, a public appearance. It was brief, controlled, carefully staged. Song Hye Kyo appeared, not smiling widely, not radiating carefree energy. Posed, so composed it felt like armor. His looked calm, yet tired in a way that photographers couldn't quite capture but viewers could sense. She offered polite acknowledgement, the smallest nod, smallest gesture. No details, no explanation. Single appearance did something terrifying. It split the public reaction in two. Some felt relief. She's okay. Looks strong. Others felt the opposite. She looks exhausted. She's pushing herself. She shouldn't have to show up just to calm us down. The noise doubled. The scrutiny intensified. And Lee Min-ho? Not appear beside her. That absence became the loudest thing in the room. Because now people were asking not only was he there, but why isn't he here now? The story pivoted again, twisting into sharper theories. Perhaps the support was meant to stay private. Perhaps public association would hurt more than it helped. Perhaps the line between kindness and rumor had become too dangerous to cross. But the praise didn't disappear. It evolved. People began praising restraint, praising discretion, praising the idea that care can exist without performance. Then, one final detail struck the public like a cold wind. Reports that her team was grateful for the concern and asked for warm support rather than speculation. Again, no confirmation, no denial. It's the kind of statement that suggests the truth is more complicated than the internet wants it to be. A complication. This story found its most intense ending, not a dramatic reveal, not a scandalous confession. Cliffhanger made of silence. Because silence can be an ending, too. Silence can be a boundary. Silence can be the last line that says, you are not allowed to know everything. What remained was the emotional residue, a public moved by the idea of gentle care. A public frightened by the possibility of real vulnerability. Two stars standing at the center of a narrative that grew larger than either of them asked for. Was Lee Min-ho praised because he truly showed quiet support? Or because people needed to believe kindness still exists in a world addicted to drama? Was Song Hye Kyo's recovery truly as serious as rumors claimed? Or was the seriousness created by the absence of information? The most shocking truth is this: the internet will always turn a human moment into a spectacle, especially when it involves someone the world feels it owns. And yet, beneath the noise, one image refused to leave people's minds: the idea of someone showing up quietly. Not for cameras, not for applause. Because someone needed care. If that's what happened, then the praise makes sense. And if it didn't, then the praise still reveals something unsettling, how desperately people want tenderness to be real. Either way, the story ends the same way, not with fireworks, but with a door gently closing. Recovery continuing behind it. And the world outside still buzzing, still guessing, still hungry, while the truth remains inside. Affected by silence. In the end, what captivated the public was not a dramatic confession, not a shocking revelation, and not a neatly wrapped answer, but the quiet power of care shown in the middle of uncertainty. Every detail was exactly as imagined or partially shaped by public emotion. One thing became clear: moments of genuine concern, especially when kept away from the spotlight, far more deeply than any headline-driven spectacle. In a world that thrives on noise, the gentlest actions often create the strongest echoes. The story of recovery, restraint, thoughtfulness reminded many that behind every public figure is a human being navigating vulnerability, pressure, and healing in real time. And sometimes, the most meaningful support is the kind that doesn't demand recognition, only respect. Thank you sincerely for taking the time to read and stay until the very end of this intense and emotional journey. Your attention, curiosity, support mean everything to us. If this story moved you, sparked your thoughts, or kept you engaged, we invite you to continue following Behind the Bulletin for more in-depth stories that explore the moments behind the headlines. Until next time, thank you for watching. Thank you for reading, and most of all, thank you for caring.